Hey there, Matt Petrowski here. This is going to be an unconventional video as opposed to a lot of my normal videos where I just shoot purely about the technology of FileMaker and how you can use it to develop great applications. If you're watching this and you haven't been involved with FileMaker for quite some time, I don't know that you'll get a whole lot out of it, but heck, it gives you more information about what is going on behind the background, behind the scenes in terms of at least my opinion with regards to being a FileMaker developer. Now, disclaimer, I don't know anything about FileMaker's internal corporate operations. And what we have on screen here, this video, is the recent Engage that FileMaker did, and then there's a second video that they did, which I believe is more important, which is actually really good. I am actually very impressed with what they are now doing, especially with Brad letting Peter speak so freely the way that he did, Peter being the VP of engineering. Now, to qualify who I am and what my background is and why I might even be able to say anything about what FileMaker's doing, where they're going, and what chances I think they have. I've been involved with FileMaker since probably about 1993, 94. I'm probably 2 years shy of going on 30 years of working with FileMaker, using it as my primary source of income, living on and with FileMaker almost on a daily basis. Now, what is FileMaker currently saying? What FileMaker is currently saying is they are also a low-code player. What did they try to do just prior? Well, just prior, someone in the organization, I have no understanding of this, probably read a book and said, okay, well, let's create a new category. From a marketing standpoint, they wanted to say, we are the workplace innovation platform, and they wanted other software to follow along with that, and it didn't work. I think to me, this is an admission that it didn't work. And some people adopted it. I personally thought it was sort of corny. Me making a living on FileMaker, and I do have ties to some people in the organization, this could be me saying, oh, you should be afraid because now they're not going to want to have anything to do with you. I don't think that's the case. I think what they're doing now is what they should have been doing all along. Now, a lot of things were said, and here we've got this second video right here. The Claris Engage Beyond 2001 Executive Q&A. Now, if you haven't been in FileMaker, this might be a little bit boring. It was shot on September 2nd. Notice that this is something that's always interesting, and I'm going to take you on a walkthrough to sort of look at other things in the industry. You've got Claris that's got 14,000 subscribers. We are not in a world where FileMaker or many other database systems are super popular. These are not going to be 47 million view videos like somebody out there who's giving people, what is it? I forget who the guy is. I could bring it up, but he'll give out you go shopping in a place and he makes a circle and as much furniture as you can fit in that, he'll buy it for you, whatever. Mr. Beast is what they call it. I don't know. I'm obviously not of that generation, but there's nothing wrong with what they're doing. But my whole point is FileMaker, just like many of the other tools, are just small little niche markets. Now, I think FileMaker as a company is probably jealous. I mean, we are all jealous when somebody's doing better than us, but you still may know that you have really good, solid technology. In fact, FileMaker does have solid technology. It is absolutely wonderful how much you can do to develop with FileMaker. But it does have some limitations. We'll talk about that in this video. And they're going to be addressing those limitations. But FileMaker probably looks at other companies like Appian and Airtable, and they see this massive growth, at least from a financial standpoint and from a user-based standpoint. And they're just like, wow, I want that too. And I, as a developer, I'd love that for them. But they've had the staying power. They're staying around, but I don't know that they're going to achieve what they're trying to achieve. But they will, depending on how they go about it, they will gain some traction, hopefully. In my opinion, they would need to do some rebranding. They would need to, it's always hard to get out of something and say, okay, we're no longer FileMaker, we're this thing, and it's some new name. That's my opinion, and it's my opinion that that's what's needed in order to get a new audience, new exposure, and like, oh, what? I haven't heard of that. When you've got an old name, you can say, oh yeah, I've heard of that. Isn't that thing that blah, blah, blah. That's just a fundamental thing. Anything that new that comes out, people, humans, they tend to look at it, determine whether they like it or not. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, let's use it. Let's adopt it. We do it with housing trends. We do it with clothing trends. We do it with technology trends. Everything comes down to, oh, what's the newest thing? I want to know what that new thing is and how is it better than my old thing? Because heck, why would you still want to build your house with a hammer when you can go use a nail gun that shoot out 3 or 5 nails at the same time? You want whatever's newest and greatest. Well, old things can put newest and greatest things into their software, but sometimes it takes a rebranding in order to make it happen. All right, that's a rant off to the side. That's just me saying, okay, yeah, I think they should rebrand, even though it would actually hurt me and other people because I have hinged my business around the keyword or the word, term, whatever, FileMaker. So I want to show you some things in this video, or talk about some things with regards to what they talked about that they were going to do in this executive Q&A. I don't have anything lined up, but one of the things they mentioned was the ESS Plus, or basically taking backend data and taking it out of FileMaker and putting it into other places, or not so much taking it out of FileMaker, just being able to have it in another location, in particular MungoDB. If they have that data in there, but then they can transition that data into FileMaker's engine and display it that way so that they don't have absolute real-time connection to everything being absolutely the truth up to the moment, the data is, as soon as you input it in a field, you commit the record and everybody else sees that exact same record. That ultimately is what the web has always been. So this eventual state of data being actually true, which is mentioned in the video, that's a good thing. That's a very good thing, in my opinion. In fact, long have I wanted in FileMaker, and we'll just flip over to FileMaker here really quickly. Which reminds me, we'll talk about this. In FileMaker, if I have, let me open up a recent database of untitled that I have here. In FileMaker, I've always thought that in layout mode, the layout mode setup, within here, they should have a check button that says something like cache data, and give the developer the ability to control whether or not this data actually shows real-time what's going on. Now, what's the problem that we have here? The problem is something that they're trying to address by going to MongoDB. They're trying to address the scalability of FileMaker. FileMaker has this real-time polling thing where it's constantly asking the server, do I have the latest and do I need to update this? It's constantly round-tripping in order to do this. That is a shortcoming in terms of FileMaker's ability to scale. If FileMaker takes their data into MongoDB or some other external source, or multiple other external sources, which a lot of software systems do, they're what they call backend agnostic. They really don't care what you use as a backend. Then you're just using the development environment for itself. But the development environment itself is one of the other problems that FileMaker has. And in fact, they admit it. And I love the honesty that came out from Peter. If you are from FileMaker and you're watching this, you should be proud of the direction that the executive management is taking, because this is the type of stuff that actually gives, at least me as a developer, more confidence in where they're heading, rather than keeping the curtain closed and keeping things all private. What they had stated was FileMaker literally has a terrible onboarding system or process. Now, they have tried to address that with throwing features at FileMaker, but if you can't even get past the point where you know what you can do with FileMaker, it's no wonder that something like Airtable is instantly more usable by a wider range of people, because you immediately get this effect of what you can use. So what are we talking about? Let's look at FileMaker's onboarding. So I'm in FileMaker, and I'm going to go up to the new. So I create a new thing, and it gives me this new item. Now, I can choose from these templates, but those templates only work if that's exactly what you're going to be doing. Many times you sort of have a rough idea, and you know that you just want to start to collect data, and it's usually a form. A lot of people, they just want to create a form, and forms for the longest time on the web have been super, super popular. You can create a form instantly through Google's Forms or through any of the other form applications, and then you just need to be able to get access to that data and then do something with it if you want to enhance how you interact with that data. So I may not want assets, contacts, or contact management. Maybe I'm just collecting data for some type of survey or something like that. There is no survey here that I can find. Okay, well, I can start with blank, but if I start with blank and I click create, and I'm going to have, whatever that file is, I'm presented with this. I can see that this is text. It's timestamp text. But if I don't know anything about data types, like field types, I'm not investigating down here in the bottom, what are these data types right here? So if you're within FileMaker or you've been developing with FileMaker, then you're probably like, okay, great, I don't need to see this, Matt. And you're right, you don't need to see this. So how has FileMaker tried to address this, and where are they heading? Now, one thing I don't agree that they sort of glossed over is Brad mentioned in his in the executive things, he mentioned that their primary customers are their most important customers. And from what I understood, we, the developers, are the primary customers because we are the people who use their software to make things actually work. And that is absolutely true. But at the same time, they need exposure to a new market, to a new audience. It's all the people who are going to Airtable and Appian and these other applications because of what they're being sold, and they see, I can instantly see what I can do. In FileMaker, you can't see what you can do. So what are two of the ways that they've tried to solve that? Well, one of the ways recently that they're trying to give people features without having to confuse them by all the developer stuff are the add-ons. And the add-ons, they're really nice, but again, this is hidden. You don't even find this unless you know to look for add-ons. So what are they doing from an onboarding standpoint? From an onboarding standpoint, if you go with Claris Cloud or their hosted service, one of the things they will do is they will present you with an application where that application has some of these things already in a template if you just choose from a template. How do I know this? Well, let's take a look at what they're doing in terms of the technology. Oh, and by the way, what I mentioned that I don't agree with them doing was sort of glossing over their technology stack. Oh, yeah, we're using some, it doesn't really matter. It shouldn't matter to you. Yes, it does matter to us as developers. They're going to be using Node and React, or a flavor of React, which allows them to go into other environments to create applications. There's wrappers that go around all of this. All of it, by the way, is pretty much JavaScript. And those wrappers like Electron can go around the JavaScript that they've designed, and then it works. So let's walk through what FileMaker has been putting in. It's right there in front of us if you haven't been exposed to it. So when you go to the Create New and you're going to create something, it's right here. It's this quick start, getting started. Now, FileMaker has had Node within it. I think going back, they transitioned from on the server side. They started using Node, I'm going to say is probably 17. Don't quote me on this, 17 or 18. At one of those points, they got rid of the Java UI for their admin for server. When we click on Get Started and we put in a new file, and I'll call this whatever2. So the first file I created was a FileMaker file when I created a whatever file. And that file was in FileMaker's UI. Now, by making a transition to Node, what they are doing is they're saying, we're going to create an experience in a completely separate environment. And we're going to talk about what the impact is of that different environment to us as developers. Again, this is a perspective, this is my perspective of what they're doing and where they're heading. Initially, when all of this was proposed, I believe in 2019 or maybe 2018, I have to admit, I was scared. I didn't like what they were saying. Oh, we're going to do web, and web is what FM Next is going to be, and Next is, it's all about the web. And I thought there's no way that they are going to be able to make a FileMaker environment within the web that's going to have the same feature parity that we have in our standard development environment right now. This creates a conflict that they're going to have to balance. They're absolutely going to have to balance, and you can tell that they're having a difficult time in these executive summaries and in their Q&A of how they're going to manage that balance. In any software organization, there is a finite amount of money that you have to spend. And you're either spending it on building new things or you're spending it on, sort of uplifting your old things, or as Peter liked to use the word, standing them up. So they have to balance where all that money goes. How much do you spend in your old environment with your current customers, us who are their primary customers, who are, the people building things that people use, versus going after the new market, which is we need to get more people on and have a better onboarding experience. Well, here in this experience, this whole thing is Node. Everything here in FileMaker, this what start, which is also on the web. When we look over here, I've got Activity Monitor loaded up. Now, this HTTP 127, this is localhost right here, running on 3100. This whole experience here in FileMaker it's web. It is Node. It is dragging. Now, as we drag these things around, it is absolutely wonderful. What they have done from a design standpoint is they are taking some decisions out of the hands of us as a developer. But from what I can understand, they're not taking it away entirely. They are trying to figure out how they are going to be able to capture more market, retain their current market, which is all of us as developers, keep us happy with our development environment, but give newer users a development environment that they can use without ruining our development environment. Again, that's all, hearsay. I don't know what their ultimate objectives are, but everything that we see in here is all web-based, and it's something that it's going to be scalable because they're using Node React. If it's tying into that MungoDB backend, that'll be great. I would just hope that they would never consider getting rid of the FileMaker UI, and I'll show you why. Everything that we have in here it's made a lot of decisions for you. First off, you can see in this, when you create a new file, and this is a FileMaker file with layouts, with tables, with features, all of these items, activity, activity card, activity timeline, events, tasks, Kanban, task card, tasks. I know my head's blocking it there. But all of these things are things that they have just thrown into the file. Whether you need them or not, maybe you don't need events, maybe you don't need tasks. The assumption has been made that you will need these things and you don't have to use them, and they will just sit there until you need them. You can get rid of them by simply selecting this, and then you click delete, and these layouts and associated items will go away. But I can assume that this is a merging of the add-ons, which are heavy JavaScript, with layouts and everything that is familiar to us in FileMaker. For example, the Kanban card that we have right there, that's probably using, if I go to the Kanban and it switches to this display, I can see right here, all this is a FileMaker layout based on a tasks table occurrence, which is using the JavaScript Kanban add-in, and this is right here. From an onboarding standpoint, this is much easier for a user because they simply go through all of these items. They're like, okay, yeah, this is something that I want to use. I can drag all of my things. It's very visual, and you see this. It's not a blank screen with nothing, and it's not something where you have to go hunt for the add-on Kanban in order to add it to your FileMaker solution. Now, what they've got here is they've got two different systems. I should use two fingers. Two different systems. You are either in one world or you are in the other world. There really isn't a whole lot of crossover, and my question will be, how well will they do at allowing that type of crossover? What we have in here is we have a lot of technology that, unless you come up to the advanced level, modifying and enhancing this is very scary for somebody who simply just wants to use this. So when you want to use this, you just have to say, okay, I'm fine with these colors. I have to be okay with these colors because the only place currently you can modify these is in the FileMaker UI. Now uh, they've got the same feel for the application. We've got the inspector here, the ability to support all of FileMaker standard data types. In the video, or the video of when Peter was talking, some object types, probably their blobs, their containers, etc., don't go well over to Mungo, where Mungo works really well with a lot of text data and it stores things as JSON. But I don't know. All these things will be really interesting to see what they do. But I just wanted to show you. Watch what happens right here. So this is running Node in the background, and it's connecting to this right here. We can actually see that it's Node while we type in right here. If we type in Node, we can see that we've got a instance of Node here. If I click on this little eye in Activity Viewer and click on Open Files and Ports, lo and behold, this will be, is this one, this is probably a different node. Yep, this is running from my NVM version. This is the node I probably want right here, Open Files and Ports. And there we go. We can see right there quite clearly that we are running, it is running Node within FileMaker. So contents, you can see that they're running, and right there, they got probably NWPC, probably stands for Node Web Publishing Connector or something like that. But there is the Node right there. That is the actual binary that's running from within the FileMaker Pro app right here loaded on my machine. I just wanted to point that out in case you didn't know that that's the case, that what FileMaker is doing. If you're a FileMaker, an intermediate or a beginner, you don't know, how does this compare to standard FileMaker? Well, when you click Done and you go into this little icon right here, Use Pro Toolset, what this is going to do is everything that they're doing in Node, wherein you create that UI, that's all created within the web, but they're translating what they're creating in the web to a FileMaker layout. So when I go into layout mode, it's taking me into an instance of Node again. As soon as I switch into, and notice I can't go into, I just hit Command B, I can't go into browse mode. Well, using the Pro Tool Set, it's going to give me the dialog right here that says, you can't go back. You need to make sure that this is what you want to do, because we're going to take away that web UI, and now you're going to be working within the FileMaker UI, and it's got this learn about the full capabilities. So from an onboarding standpoint, my guess is this is what, whether you're running on-prem, I don't know that they're going to give the builder that they're using on FileMaker Cloud right now for the ability to do this. The only thing that we have currently is here in FileMaker. When you go up to the Create New and you say, let's do the Let's Getting Started experience, how they transition that in the future will be really interesting. But who knows? If I want to do any modification to this, if I want to go to the Kanban right here, and it doesn't have any events in here, but if I switch to the Pro Tool Set, let's go ahead and convert it right now. I convert that, and I go into layout mode, and I go into this. This is Confusionville now. So if they do a good job and they segregate this onboarding, but they keep the FileMaker UI so that developers like myself or you, if you're a FileMaker developer, can get in and actually take advantage of all of this complex stuff. I mean, from this point, trying to modify the UI of the Kanban board so that I can just simply use the colors that I want, it's easy to do if you know HTML, CSS, and you can access the CSS, but the CSS isn't even really exposed. I think you have to go to one of the layouts, which is one of the builders. I'd have to bring up the layouts here and bring that on screen. Look at where the Kanban, there's the Kanban configurator. Of course, the Kanban configurator doesn't even have probably the CSS on the layout. The configurator is just HTML. I have to go over to my fields, know that I'm looking for the HTML, which they're probably embedding the HTML or the CSS within the HTML. Let's scroll this off the window. So it's all hidden right now, and it's a balancing act. Honestly, you're balancing how much exposure do you give to someone in terms of letting them shoot themselves in the foot. And that's what happens with FileMaker. It's very easy to get to a point where you just throw up your hand and you're like, I can't figure this out. I just want it to do it. And you go to something else and it just instantly does it. And I think that's the problem that they're trying to solve. So that's a lot of rambling. I'm just putting this out there into the world. Probably the only people interested in watching this are going to be fellow FileMaker developers because they're going to have an opinion too. In fact, if you do, leave your comments down below. But just to get my opinion out there and not make this too long of a video, what I'll talk about next is why I think the FileMaker UI, its IDE, is so valuable and should not be abandoned in favor of a complete web UI unless they're going to do what they should do if they're going to go with a full web UI. Okay, so what makes FileMaker's UI so special? What is the secret sauce that keeps so many people engaged and sometimes even through frustration, leaving FileMaker and then coming back? It is the ease of use and the inherent flexibility of their UI. And that is being able to interact with that UI such that you don't have to have a super high level of knowledge and get very satisfactory results. How does that differ from the web? Well, the web requires multiple disciplines in order to accomplish one simple thing. So, for example, in order to accomplish one simple thing in the web, you have to know HTML first off, which is the structure. Then you have to know CSS, which is the visual. Then you have to know JavaScript, which is going to allow for your interaction. Let's compare that to FileMaker. Now, all of that stuff, with regards to the Kanban board, the example that I just showed, is all in this one field right here. Now, all of this code right here, which is not formatted as code, is formatted somewhere as code. My guess is Todd Geis has it. He created a lot of the features for the JavaScript release of FileMaker 19. But this code is not exposed. There's no editor. It's not easy to work with. It's hidden. And that obscurity makes it very frustrating for anybody, even somebody who's trying to learn. So they've hidden that stuff away. They'll make it exposed on their web UI, but the question will be, will they make the web UI something that you can enhance and extend, or will it be limited? In other words, the view that we just came from, where we were able to use their new experience, if they don't allow us to use our own JavaScript libraries to extend or modify the CSS, if it's all trapped away, hidden somewhere, which you can keep something, subdued and out of the way, but yet exposed and let a developer take advantage of it for the sake of your newer customers. But if you completely lock it away so that it can't be interacted with, so if they go with a web UI in this transition, and that starts to make more money for them because they're able to onboard more people, and they say, oh, this is fine, we're getting our subscription, everybody who's using server is, they're paying their monthly fees, we're all great, let's just go with this path, keep everything limited. That to me is going to be the downfall of FileMaker. So what makes FileMaker so great? It is FileMaker's UI in that in order to achieve the same thing within FileMaker, let's say just a simple bar, everything that we have right here in our IDE, within our UI as a builder, is visual. That's what gives the payback. When you put something on the screen and it just works, it's a very rewarding feedback mechanism to somebody who's using the tool and the software, and that's what's been the hallmark of FileMaker. It's what's kept me in FileMaker, is it is so easy to create something visually. And it goes without saying, in the world of FileMaker, if you've gone to a FileMaker DevCon, and I've met hundreds, if not thousands of people over all of my years of going to DevCon, and I have spoken at, I don't know what percentage, at least 50% of all of the different DevCons going all the way back to 97. The people, they're all, not all, but a lot of us, you, if you're watching this as FileMaker developers, are creatives. People who have been in music or been in some area where a creative aspect came in. And what's really cool is FileMaker facilitates that urge for us to be creative. So if I want a slider, I just go up here and I pick on my little slide control right here, and then I drag this on screen, and it's the fact that things can be layered. Whereas in CSS or in HTML and CSS, things aren't so much layered, they're more positioned. And then if you want to bring something on screen, you can do it with JavaScript and something comes in because of code. It's not already there like we have in FileMaker, and then you just hide or show it. Now, in JavaScript, you do have things where visibility does play a role, where things hide and show. And once you hide or show them, everything else collapses up and down, and that's where you get a lot of responsive design. That's what many of the things that we want in FileMaker, which we will get with a web UI, but hopefully they will address that. But this slider, if I want this slider to be here and I want one of the panes to go away, and if I set this whole thing and go over and say, okay, I want to select the actual panel and I'm going to make this transparent, it goes invisible. I now have this invisible thing that I can move between two things on top of this screen, and the first one can have nothing down here at the bottom, but I switch onto the second one and all of a sudden the second one has a button or whatever else it is that I want to show. So we'll put a button right here and we'll call it a big button. This, again, isn't a technical thing here. Let's see, faded, large. Let's get it. There's a button right there. So, again, I have nothing, and then all of a sudden have something. This visual UI with the layering, the objects, and the fact that these things are stacked on top of each other, visually being able to control this is the secret sauce that FileMaker has in conjunction with its easy access to the logic, which is the calculation engine. If you take those things away and you're not able to build things as quickly, then we're losing something in the world of FileMaker if this goes away. Trying to make a builder in HTML is completely possible, but it still requires all of those disciplines, the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript. And for many people, it's just too much. It's overload having to know that many things when all you really want to do is you want to say, I want a field. I'm going to click the plus sign to add the new field that I want. Here is my field. And then you simply just drag my field out onto the screen, wherever it went. Where did my field go? FileMaker? I just created a field. There, it shows up. Was it not there before? I don't know. And I drag that out right there, and then I get to position this wherever I want. Now, FileMaker is already, you can already see that they're making some decisions for you, and you cannot break these things out. Will they be able to solve that? I don't know. But in that new builder, you now have a label that is attached to a field. Because of going with HTML, FileMaker is having to make some choices, and they're having to say, we are going to make it so that you have a field and it is in this top position and you really don't have any say currently in order to modify that. So unless they give us controls in order to modify that, if they go with the web UI, if eventually, and this would be 5 years, I don't know, maybe 10 years, it's all going to be dependent on what the market says about what they're doing in terms of whether or not it increases their onboarding and their number of installed users or not. If going down that route doesn't actually give them a result, just like with workplace innovation, okay, we weren't able to carve out that niche and then get adoption based on saying we're the workplace innovation. Now we're going to, say what everybody else is. We are a low-code platform. We're initially a low-code, but then we do become pro-code. It is definitely in FileMaker that you're able to do that, which is really, really cool. So I don't know how long I should go on about this. I'll see if I have any closing thoughts, but I just wanted to say that's my opinion of the UI. If you have opinions as a FileMaker developer, or if you're new or intermediate, tell me what your opinions are down below. One of the interesting things is that when a new product comes out, like Airtable or Appian, and they start to gain traction, they get a lot of talk and a lot of people saying a lot of things. And quite honestly, FileMaker just doesn't get a whole lot of talk. I remember what I wanted to talk about was I had it in my web viewer, my web browser. I wanted to talk about the positioning that FileMaker has and address that a little bit. And all of these are in response to what they talked about in the videos that I watched, their executive summary Q&A, and then also just what they mentioned on the actual Engage. So we'll talk about that. Enough about the UI. All right, let's talk about the market. I first off cannot claim to know anything about the market. FileMaker has more information and knowledge about their own market than I will ever have. All I do is use whatever data and details I can dig out of the internet and what people are looking at. Now, one of the most popular things to do is to always go to like trends.google.com. You can search for a keyword and see how popular that keyword is. So FileMaker, you can see that over time, this is past 12 months. Let's go for 2004 to present. And you get this really depressing graph of right here. Oh, look, back in 2004, and I mean, I go back to the 90s when FileMaker was even more popular. You've had nothing but this constant decline that's going down. Then you go up here to compare and you say, fine, what about Airtable? What about people looking for that? Oh, we can see that in 2016, it became pretty interesting. And look at that. It came up and it became really popular and it was interesting. But look at this. We had a drop right there. In fact, let's go to the past 5 years and just look at everything. And you've got a little bit of a cross table, and then you're going to put in Appian. Now, this is all great and all. This is what people, these are search terms. And you always think about the search term as relative to what else people are looking for. You don't even have sub-search terms within this. All the terms that FileMaker 19, FileMaker 18, FileMaker this, FileMaker that, versus all these other things. This is all just a broad stroke general Google. Give me the data with regards to searching. But you can see here that it's not like anything's super more popular over the other, in the past 5 FileMakers even coming out. But again, you can go back to that graph that's been showing the depressing decline. I've been guilty of that myself. Ultimately, what you can do is you can use resources to evaluate the popularity of things just based on things that we currently do, which are things like YouTube. So I oftentimes will go in and I will search for things and look for what YouTube is actually saying. So I've got a browser right here. What I'll do is I'll pop this to a window right here. Then I'll make a new anonymous browser. Now, when you make an anonymous or an incognito browser, it's a little bit easier because none of your previous search history is all tracked. You've got fresh, brand new cookies. I go to YouTube, and that is what YouTube would show to anybody who's never been on the web before. Hopefully nothing offensive comes up here. But I go in and I do a search for, say, for example, FileMaker, and then you look at the videos that come up. We've got some pretty good numbers, 154,000 views on something that was 3 years ago. FileMaker Beginner came out, did some videos. AppWorks has got a 1.5 in here, 29,000. If we do the same thing in this scenario and put in Airtable, we know that Airtable is making a lot more money, but we look at the fact that it's only got 11,000 subscribers. So you have to ask yourself, how many of these subscribers reliably watch the content that company puts out? Companies don't really put out content. You have to look at how many other creators are there. So you're not looking at the main company. So I wouldn't be looking at Claris. I wouldn't be looking at Airtable and see what they're making. I'd look at how many other people there are. So this Process Boost, he's got 57,000 views a year. You can just divide 57,000 by 365. You've got 43,000 views. You start to look at the averages for these in terms of what the content people are putting out relative to the technology that you're actually searching for. And these are just things that I do. Appian, you look for that one. You can see that they've got, so relatively speaking, if you put in FileMaker, or you go to Claris, I don't know if Claris will come up. There we go, Claris, 14,000. The relative number of subscribers to the actual companies is pretty much the same. But when you look at the content, yes, there's more content coming out on some of these other platforms, and you're just really having to aggregate a lot of the data from across the web. So another way that I go and look at things, because we're always interested when we're invested in a platform, like I'm invested in FileMaker. Obviously, I'm making a video for my own magazine, which focuses on FileMaker. I want to know, where do I fit into this ecosphere, the whole of the technology? Is this something still viable? Is this something that I should continue to invest in? Despite the fact that it's carried me along for the last 30 years, is the decisions that they're making here on this video something that's going to support me in the future? So I went over and I did a search for a Google search of simply best low code platform. Best is a keyword that a lot of times people will use. Low code is what FileMaker is hinging off of, at least currently now, and everybody else is. And it has definitely, because of the pandemic, sprung up, and low code is the word. So you go through one of these. I think I clicked on the PC Mag one or this first link right here, and I bring those up, and they come up, and then they have a list right there. So then I will use this list and go over and look for how much content is being created on YouTube. And if that content is being consumed, then you know that that platform, has, relative to FileMaker's viability, has a pretty good, viability. So like I went over to this Quixie one, and Quixie gave me, I don't know, hardly anything. I just got, one subscriber. There's the official. They only had 309 subscribers. So I don't know how much of a competitor Quixie is. I'd have to go look for other data about, if I can find any of their financials, if they're privately held or public, what have you. Here's a popular one, Appian. You can go look at Appian. Also, shout out to Chris Moyer and Heidi Porter. They did a video with Richard Carlton and talked about, these platforms. They all have pros and cons, just like all things. I guess more what I'm thinking of is when you consider something like Airtable, where you've got what I consider to be more of a fixed environment versus a creative environment. It is fixed to providing the feature sets that they want to provide to you based on what they think, or what they determine based on use, what most people end up wanting and using. And then they just add these features a la carte to the platform based on what people give feedback that they want. The FileMaker environment is different, and I don't know if FileMaker knows how to distinguish this, but it is definitely a clean slate. When we go into the FileMaker environment and we talk about the onboarding being so plain because you're just provided with a blank, empty layout, creativity is off the board. You can do and create whatever you want and go as far as you want. You can keep it as simple as you need it to be, but at least you can go past the barriers of whatever the platform has. That doesn't make sense. You can go past the barriers that you might think that are there, because they're not actually barriers, because FileMaker doesn't have many barriers. Whereas if you're using Airtable and you want it to do a certain thing, if you're not able to do that yourself, you're dependent on the developers until they put that feature in, if they get enough requests for that particular feature. That is what I believe FileMaker should capitalize and focus on. Although I do believe that they should address what they're addressing right now, which is we need to be able to get people on board easier with a better experience so that they start using the product, then rely on their primary customers, us, the developers, to actually be able to take them beyond that point, because that particular customer does not want to get in and look at the JavaScript for a Kanban board just in order to make it have, some different colors. So that's what I do when I go through and I continually evaluate, where does FileMaker fit into this? It doesn't help us that FileMaker oftentimes, because it is so old, and again, this gets back to the whole notion that even though FileMaker is hesitant to, if I was running FileMaker, I would seriously consider a rebranding. I would, even though it pains me to say, I've dedicated my life to the word FileMaker, I think it's time. I believe that they should rebrand. They're playing in a world that is so much more open. They are not the sole proprietary player in a non-open source world going back to the 90s. They are in a world where a competitor can pop up within 6 months, and the only reason that they have staying power is the fact that they've got people who have an investment in their current architecture. And because their businesses are built on that architecture, all FileMaker really has to do is give them a reason to stay with that architecture. If there is no reason, or if another vendor provides a very easy way to transition to their product and segue, which heck, data is data. You can export and import data anywhere. But the speed that you're able to create and build things in FileMaker, that is their That's their key, and they have to be able to capitalize on that while they're going and chasing after all of these higher dollars. Let's get more people, because Airtable's got 1,000 billion people and they're making hundreds of millions of dollars instead of the 50 or so million that we're probably making. But that's all I have to say. I mean, nobody wants to watch a FileMaker for 2 hours about some guy ranting about it just because he's been working in it for 30 years. I just wanted to get that out based on having seen the videos and what they were talking about, show you how I evaluate things. Number one, I am extremely appreciative of the approach that they took in the executive Q&A. You guys did an absolute stellar job, going all the way back to, I forget who the CEO is when I first started with FileMaker back in the 90s, Guillermo or DeGuillermo, I forget his name. I apologize. But this is a good approach. So I'm excited, and I hope you are too. If you're a FileMaker developer, and if you made it this far into the video, congrats to you. I hope this doesn't bring my YouTube channel down. If you liked this, or if there's stuff that you want to talk about, leave the comments down below, and much luck and happy FileMaking.